Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the game I played in the round 2 of the US Open, which was also in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and that tournament was right after the Danker. So the Danker's last round was in the morning on Tuesday, and the US Open had the first round Tuesday night. So I basically get no rest in between. I do get some rest, but go into the first round and I get a 1500. I just beat him. Blundered a piece on move 15 or something. And then second game, I get a Grandmaster David Brodsky. He is about, I think he's 20 years old. He goes to University of Texas at Dallas. So he's a very strong player. He's a Grandmaster, obviously. So let's see how this game goes. So we get e4, c5, knight f3, g6. This is the accelerated dragon. And we get the Moroxy bind with c4. So these two pawns create a nice center for white. We get knight f6, knight c3, and now I trade the knights to kind of lure the queen into the center here. And my idea is going to be to play bishop g7 to try to gain some tempo on the queen because it's going to have to sidestep some discoveries. So after d6, bishop e2, bishop g7, castles, castles. Now my opponent steps back with the queen. Now my opponent only steps back now because this bishop was not protected, but now after I castle, it's protected by my king. So now the queen has to step back to d3. So I play bishop e6, bishop e3, we're both developing our pieces, queen a5, rook c1, and now I play rook f to c8. Now the reason I play rook f to c8 is to give my king this f8 square, so if my opponent ever tries to cheese me with knight d5, if the queen was on d2, then after I can take the queen, and after the knight takes e7, I can play king f8 attacking the knight, so that after my opponent takes back, I can take the knight and win a piece. So to illustrate that, just pretend that the queen is here, play a random move. After knight d5, I can take the queen, and then I can go king f8, and then after takes, I can take the knight and win a piece. And also, having the rooks on the queen side makes sense because my play is mainly pointed towards the queen side here. So we get b3 protecting the c4 pawn, a3, a6, and my idea is to play b5 to try to hack away at this pawn chain on the queen side. So I have these bishops pointing on the queen side, I want to push some pawns to complement them. We get bishop d4, challenging this long diagonal. I play knight d7 to trade the bishops. And now if you look at the pawns, I have a light squared bishop, and my opponent has light squared pawns, and also a light squared bishop. So what I'm supposed to be doing now is to put pawns on dark squares so that my opponent's bishop cannot attack them. However, I don't realize that in the game, and after f4, my idea is to play f5, which isn't great because it puts the pawn in the same square as the bishop, and also it's just not a very good move. Because the idea is to stop f5, but I don't really have to stop f5. I have to just play f6 here. Then after f5, I get this e5 square, very nice, and I can also just drop the bishop back. If my opponent takes, I just take. I have this h-file. This is very good for me. So if I played f6, I would have a acceptable position. Instead, I played queen c5 check and king h1, and the reason I played this first instead of f5 immediately is to stop this nasty queen d4 check. So play queen c5, f5, and now there's some tension in the center, and white plays very principled and plays bishop f3, keeping the tension and improving his pieces before he releases the tension. So the threat here is to take or play e5 and then open up the bishop to hit this b7 pawn. So I protect that with rook c7, and after rook e1, rook to e8, and it's just very hard to protect everything because there's so much tension here and so many threats. Knight d5 also takes an e5. Now my opponent plays queen d2, a nice prophylactic move, and now after takes and bishop f5, it's no longer attacking the queen, and white has time to play moves like knight d5. So I play knight f6, we get queen b2, another nice move, maneuvering the queen onto this diagonal. So now after takes and knight e4, this is going to be very devastating with the diagonal here. The knight is also pinned. So I play king f7 to sidestep that, and now my opponent finally plays e5. So this attacks the knight and also threatens to open up this rook with a lot of threats. I play knight d7, takes, and now my opponent could play many moves to get a really good advantage. Maybe knight d5 is a move. If I take, that would be no good because bishop takes, and if I step back with the king, this is a checkmate in one move. So I have to move the rook, and this knight is very strong. This rook's very strong. My opponent can double here. My opponent can put the rook on the file. Very, very overwhelming position for white. However, my opponent decides to cash in already and sacrifices the rook. Now what's going on here? If I take with the king, then after knight d5, there's a lot of threats, such as queen g7. After rook moves, queen g7 would just box the king in, and I have no answer to rook e1. I mean, I could play queen f2, but I mean, this king is not going to survive. In fact, there's just checkmate in 2 here. That's the checkmate in 2. Knight c7 and bishop d5. Very, very nice. Okay, so I can't take with the king, but I can take with the rook. I can take with the rook. And now my opponent plays bishop d5 to pin the rook, and I think he might have missed knight f6, threatening to get rid of the pin. Because my opponent's idea is to play rook e1 to put more pressure on the pinned piece. However, if my opponent plays rook e1 now, I just take the bishop. And if my opponent takes, I just take the knight first, and I'm up a piece at least. So now my opponent just has to take, and I'm probably a little bit worse here with the weak king, but I can step it back after h3, stopping the back rank, and king f7. And there's not many pieces on the board now, and the pawn structure is basically symmetrical other than this backward pawn and also isolated pawn. But that's okay, that's not a huge deal. I'm attacking the square in front of it and protecting it. So now after rook e1, I can start to make some threats with queen d4. So I'm hitting this pawn, and I'm also threatening b5, even though I didn't realize it. So after queen c1, I could have played this move b5. This would have been a very nice opportunity to basically never lose the game, because I'm just going to win a pawn. I don't really know why I didn't see this. I guess I just forgot about the plan b5 after I was just, because past like 10 or 15 moves, I was just struggling not to lose immediately. So I kind of forgot that I could play these kinds of moves. Kind of unfortunate, but it's still okay after rook e7 trying to trade rooks. Rook d1, queen f2. So now if you look at this position, both kings are pretty weak. My king is probably more exposed, but my queen's kind of close to the king. So my opponent plays queen d2, trying to get rid of the queen. And if I do trade queens, there's very, very little chance I lose the game now, because even though this pawn is kind of weak, I can just play rook e3 attacking the knight, king a7 to protect it. And this is basically my only weakness, and you really need 2 weaknesses to possibly lose the game. That's the principle of 2 weaknesses. And even though my opponent's a grandmaster, my opponent is not. He still has to play according to the rules of chess, and according to the rules of chess, this should be a draw, if not slightly better for me, because I can put my knight on an active square. Now, I don't trade queens because I was scared to. That's basically the only explanation I have, other than possibly nerves or just the pressure of the tournament situation. I could, really not the tournament situation, it's the second round. I'm not really trying to win the tournament, but I am playing a Grandmaster. That does have an effect psychologically, and the only way to deal with that is to just have experience. So instead I play queen g3, which is still okay, but after king g1, now I really do kind of have to trade queens, or else it's going to get kind of dicey, which is what happens after knight e4. So what I'm trying to do with knight e4 is trying to create a passed pawn, and the idea is if I advance that pawn far enough, white just has to take a perpetual. Now that is an idea, but it ends up not working. As you'll see in the game, after takes and takes, queen d5 check, now I have to put the king on an accurate square, and I just have to make a lot of accurate moves in a row, which is never what you want to be doing against a grandmaster, if you're not a grandmaster yourself. So I play king f8, that's my first big mistake in this little endgame. This just allows queen takes d6, pinning the rook, and now I'm in a lot of trouble because I can't really protect my king from these nasty checks. So I play e3 in the game, and that just blunders queen f6, and the game is basically just over now. So I play king e8, my opponent plays queen h8, and queen takes h7. My opponent could have also just played rook d6, threatening queen h8, and rook f6 checkmate. I don't really have a good answer to this. If I play rook d7, we just get rook e6, if I move the rook anywhere else, we just get rook d8. My best bet here is to just sack the queen and play e2, and it's not entirely obvious how black stops this pawn. So if I can sack the queen, this is probably winning, but this isn't ideal. Why would you have to sack the queen back? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, white's up a queen, so white can afford to give back some material, so white can actually play rook to d8 check, sacrificing the rook, and now queen b8 check, queen takes b7, and now with these two pawns, white can afford to sack the queen and then play king f2 and win the pawn back. White can also play queen to d2 check with the idea of going to e1, blockading with the queen, and the rook can never really leave the defense of this pawn, and after white starts pushing pawns on the queen side, black is most likely going to have to give up this pawn. Okay, but I don't see queen f4, and this doesn't even happen in the game anyways, but after check and check, this is already very dangerous. My only hope is to go queen f2 and get some kind of perpetual check, but my opponent just keeps checking me, repeats a couple times to get to move 40, and after queen h6, attacking this pawn, the game is basically over because there's just nothing I can do. If I play e2, we just get queen to f8 check. Wait, no, not queen f8. I think rook to d6 check, and if I go here, queen to f8 check. I can't run with my king because my opponent I lose the rook with check. So I can't do that. I just try to play king f7 because, I mean, the queen on h8 and h6, there is a huge difference. It's that this pawn is protected, and my opponent now has time to play rook d6. So this wasn't possible with the king on f7 because I can check. I'm actually winning here because I can fork the rook. But with the pawn protected on h6, now this does work, and it's going to be checkmate very soon. I try rook e6, but after queen h7, I just resign the game, because no matter where I go, I just get checkmated. King f7, king f6 runs into queen h8, and queen d8. And if I go to f8, my opponent doesn't even have to take my rook. Actually, if my opponent does take the rook, it is going to be a draw, because I can get this perpetual. But my opponent doesn't have to take the rook, my opponent can check first, and after I go there, check, and queen takes the rook with checkmate following very shortly after. So I resign the game, I lose the game against the Grandmaster. Not a huge surprise, but it is unfortunate I had these chances with b5 and trading queens. But you have to learn to capitalize on those chances, and that just comes with experience. So hopefully with more experience, I'll finally be able to draw or even win against a Grandmaster, hopefully in the future. So that's the second game. I have two more games I would like to show, because this is the US Open. It's just one big open tournament. There's ratings all the way from 200 to 2600. So apart from a 2100 and two Grandmasters, also get a Grandmaster in the last round, I just get like 1500, 1700s, and an 1800. So if you want to see those games, then you can comment or you can tell me somehow, and I can make some sort of compilation of 1700 just blundering. That would be kind of funny. But the next video is going to be my game against a 2100, which is basically the only other decent game, and then also a Grandmaster in the last round also. So I'll see you guys in those videos. Bye everyone.